I want to welcome everyone. My name is Jim Nathan. I'm also joined, but you can't see her, by my wife, Karen. We're two of the co-founders for Floridians for Democracy, and we're honored to have you here this evening. We've got a phenomenal program of faith leaders sharing their perspective on what many of us are seeing is a very inhumane and unjust way of treating human beings. I want to share one quick quote with you and then introduce Bill, and we'll on to the program. Adriana, age 16, from Palm Beach County, came from Venezuela at age 1, so she's been here 15 years. She showed her bravery recently and her clarity when discussing policies being rapidly perpetrated. She states, "When you think they are done being cruel, dehumanizing, and inhumane, they come up with a new way to hurt us." How sad that a 16-year-old, that's the focus in her life. And she didn't deserve that. And tonight we're going to chat about that and share from a faith perspective. With that, I'm introducing Bill Petrarca. For those of you who have been a regular attendee, Bill's one of the co-founders at Floridians for Democracy, and he is the organizer for this evening's program. He'll introduce our moderator, and they'll take it from there. So, Bill, you're on, and I'm going to put the note in the chat about sending questions.
Great. Thank you, Jim. And I just before I introduced Sandra, I wanted to just do some housekeeping information for you. So the panel will discuss their questions from Sandra for about an hour or so, and back and forth in a dialogue. And after that, we'll open it up for questions from the audience. And when you do have a question, raise your virtual hand. Down at the bottom, you'll see a place where you can raise your hand, and that'll put you up to the front of the screen, and we'll be able to see you, and you can ask your question. If you have questions during the dialogue, the panelist dialogue, and you don't want to forget them, forget the question, just send it to me in the chat or to Jim Nathan, and we'll try to consolidate those questions and ask them during the panelist discussion. But afterwards, we'll be opening it up. Okay, so let me at this time introduce Sandra Viktorova, and I'm going to put her on the stage as we speak. So Sandra is a former investigative reporter for Miami's NBC affiliate, and she anchors WGCU's Southwest Florida In Focus, which is a weekly show. Sandra received a Gracie Award for her documentary Dream School, A Journey to Higher Education. Viktorova won 3 regional Emmys for her work as an investigative and special projects producer with NBC and Telemundo in Miami. So I am proud to turn it over to Sandra, and it's all yours, Sandra.
Bill, thank you so much for having me, and welcome to everybody who is tuned in with us this evening. I welcome you, and a special thank you to our panel. Thank you for participating this evening. We are eager to learn from you and to understand the big issues confronting not just the state of Florida, certainly, but across our country. So we thank you to all the panelists who have taken their time to share their knowledge, their expertise, and their wisdom with us. So thank you for that. I will say that I do approach this evening as a journalist. My opinions don't matter. And I will try to stay somewhere in the middle on all of this. With that said, I want to introduce our panel members in no particular order, just the bios as I was given them. I want to start with Reverend Dr. Russell Meyer. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Welcome to you. Reverend Meyer has dual ministry roles. He's currently a minister at St. John's Lutheran of Jacksonville, Florida, executive director for the Florida Council of Churches. He serves to elevate the faith of churches whose 1 million members anchor communities across our state. In 2017, the state legislature appointed him to the Dozier Memorial Task Force. He has helped to lead proclamations that the city of St. Petersburg and the city of Compassion have issued. He's passionate about realizing a pluralistic democratic society. I'd like to now go to Reverend Gail Fisher Stewart. The Dr. Stewart is or I should say Fisher Stewart is a priest in the Episcopal Diocese of Washington. Welcome to you, a native of Washington. Prior to accepting the call to ordained ministry, she retired from the Metropolitan Police Department as a captain and then taught at the university level. So we look forward to getting your insight double as far as looking from another perspective. We thank you for that. And now I go to Reverend David Williamson, is an elder in the Florida Confront United Methodist Church, appointed to Extension Ministry with Belonging, Inc. He is a skilled facilitator, providing education support and leader development services for clergy, congregations, and communities who want to build communities of belonging. So we move on to Reverend Kim Robles. Is it Robles or Robles? I apologize.
No worries. I say Robles, but
okay, perfect. I wanted to say it in Spanish. Reverend Kim Robles is an ordained minister of Word and Sacrament in the Presbyterian Church. She currently serves as pastor at Pinecrest Presbyterian Church in Miami. And we welcome you. And then we go to Reverend Arthur Jones. Did I pronounce that correctly, sir? Can you hear me, Reverend Jones?
You did. You did pronounce it correctly.
Okay, super. Reverend Jones is newly appointed minister at Unitarian Universalist Congregation at Fort Myers. He was awarded a Master of Divinity from the Sewanee School of Theology and has pursued additional graduate programs at Valdosta State University. And last but not least, Betty Osceola has led numerous public prayer walks and environmental awareness campaigns across South Florida, often focusing on threats to indigenous land, water quality, and climate justice. Betty is a member of the Miccosukee Tribe of Indians of Florida and the Panther Clan, and she's been recognized as a Miccosukee tribal judge and serves on the Everglades Advisory Committee. So welcome to all of you. And I also want to say hello and welcome to a special guest, our legal expert for tonight. That's Amanda Velasquez. We thank you so much for joining us. Amanda is an attorney, an immigration attorney for 25 years. She's originally from Nicaragua. Her practice is located in South Florida. Amanda's immigration practice is primarily removal defense, family-based immigration, and humanitarian-based immigration. And I can say that I have talked to Amanda many times. We've done stories together, and I thought it was important for Amanda to be here tonight because I do think it's beneficial for us to be able to ask questions, legal questions about, what is allowed, what is not allowed. I think she'll be insightful to everyone this evening. And I'm going to turn things up. Bill, I got everyone, correct? I hope I make sure we got everybody.
You do.
I'm taking a little detour with all of you this evening. I thought it would be super beneficial if we could allow Amanda to just talk for a few moments to give us sort of, she's on the front lines, and it's important for her, I think, to give us a perspective of what is happening right now, what she is seeing as an attorney. She's on the front lines of this every day. Amanda, you'll have to refresh my memory. I know, obviously, you've been many times to immigration detention facilities. I don't know if you had been out to, I hate to call it that, but the detention facility in the Everglades. I won't call it what a lot of what we've been dubbing it, but can you share with us what you have seen from a legal perspective that has had you concerns about human rights and constitutional rights? I think that'd be helpful for our panel and for our guests tonight.
Sure. Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, everybody, for inviting me. It's really a pleasure to be here with all of you tonight. I have not personally been out to that center, but I have had clients detained out there over the last couple of months. And I've been able to meet with them virtually, but I haven't gone in person. So I will just say that. But my main concern, and I think just from a legal standpoint, the legal community's main concern is access to legal counsel for folks that are detained out there and really in any detention facility. But in particular, that one and other ones like it that are popping up around the country, where access to counsel has been very very difficult, at least initially. It took about 3 weeks after that center opened before there was ever, before any attorneys were even allowed to go in, and you had to make an appointment, and it was a very like long drawn out process. And then it took a little bit longer than that to set up virtual hearings, to be able to speak with them even virtually on unrecorded lines. So our main concern with whenever any client is detained is to be able to have access to our clients in a prompt fashion, and be able to have a confidential conversation with those folks. So that was very alarming, to not, for that center to have opened and not have had those mechanisms in place from day one. You know, a definitively a very you know, concerning constitutional violation for sure. And then there were other things too that were very surprising. You know, I don't know if you all know where it's located in relation to some of the other centers that we're used to working out of. Like, for example, the Chrome Detention Center in Kendall is not far from the center in the Everglades. And so there was a lot of uncertainty about which detention center was going to have jurisdiction over the folks that were detained at the Everglades Center. And basically everybody was washing their hands of it. ICE initially said that they're not in our custody. It's a state facility, so therefore we can't hear any bond hearings. There is no immigration court in that center like there are in many other ICE centers. And Sandra, you're aware of one particular young man who was back and forth a couple of times with trying to get a bond hearing, that you know, took probably 3 weeks before we could finally get him in front of an immigration judge to hear his bond hearing. And that was after he was transferred to Texas from the center in the Everglades. So that's another, you know, constitutional concern as well, you know, access to counsel, you know, even being not knowing, not one hand not knowing what the other hand is doing, basically. I believe now that particular center has a little bit more of its I's dotted and T's crossed. There was a time where it had shut down because of the environmental lawsuit out of the Southern District, but they are open. And as of right now, I don't have any clients detained there today, but you know, detentions are happening all the time, especially down here in South Florida. So I expect that that's going to be continuing.
And if I can end with one more question, Amanda, before I open it up to our panel, can you address what you heard from your clients who have been detained at these immigration facilities about conditions? And I'll open it, not just, I'll outright say at Alligator Alcatraz, but as well as Chrome. What are the conditions like for these individuals?
So at Chrome, for example, overcrowding is a big problem. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's, you know, the amount of detainees that are taken to Chrome on a regular basis is much more than we see in like normal times. And then a lot of not access to being able to use the phones. For example, at the Everglades Center, it was really difficult for those individuals to be able to get access to the phones because there was, you know, so many of them being detained there and not enough of you know, facilities to be able to use that. Because of where it's located, a lot of concerns with the weather, with bugs. I had several clients complaining about, you know, the conditions, just, you know, the heat and the humidity. We all know what South Florida feels like in the summer, in the middle of the summer. And this was July, August, so you can imagine. And so those conditions are, you know, subpar to say the least. And then there's a lot of transferring of detainees from one day to the next without counsel being advised. After, you know, I've got family members calling me all the time saying, you know, he's not there anymore, she's not there anymore. It takes several days to locate them, you know, and next thing we know, they're in a similar center out in Texas, for example, El Paso, which is Fort Bliss, I believe. So similar conditions out there as well. So yeah, definitely not good conditions at all. And not a lot of accountability about who's really in charge of these centers.
Thank you, Amanda. I appreciate that. Bill, if I can start with you, your motivation for helping to organize tonight's event and what the response was from faith leaders. Was there some reluctancy to speak out on this issue?
Yes. So our motivation was to really provide a forum, an interfaith dialogue about the immigration detention centers in Florida, and led by respected clergy and justice advocates, because we felt that the public needed to be aware of what was going on, and to also elevate the moral urgency of the situation. And that's the primary reason that we pulled this together. And it's unfortunate that there were, in my effort to try to find people to participate, there was a certain amount of fear that was under the radar, so to speak, that they didn't want to participate because they were concerned about what might happen to their family, to their congregation, or to their organization. So it's unfortunate that there's this fear element in our society as we try to practice our rights.
I'm going to open this question up to the panel, and that is what your message has been to your congregation, your parishioners, about the immigration crackdown and this detention or I would say mass detention and deportations right now. Who would like to take that? Reverend Meyer, would you like to start?
Thanks, Sandra, and thanks, Amanda, for your legal background. To the question, I had a large banner made back in the spring when we held our advocacy days in Tallahassee. We had a interfaith prayer vigil for immigrants at the City Hall across from the state capitol. Tallahassee clergy are continuing that interfaith vigil now on Sunday evenings. They did it all through September. They're starting to do it through October now. And we're hoping to create a nationwide series of interfaith vigils the third week in October to really sort of impact media with what the core faith, religious, spiritual value is, that all human beings deserve equal dignity, equal respect, and due process, and that's a non-negotiable from a perspective of being human. So it's the human first. And so the banner that we have hanging says we're all immigrants, in one way or another. If not physical immigrants, spiritual immigrants in this country. Most Floridians were not born in Florida. So migration is the human story. You cannot criminalize the human story and still consider people their humanity first. And many people have taken a picture of a banner, or showing it around. It quotes an Old Testament scripture, quotes a New Testament scripture, and it then advocates for studying the root causes of the current immigration that we're looking at. And I hope we can have a discussion about that.
Reverend Jones, can you tell us how you've addressed immigration in your church?
So I've been blessed enough to be able to address this directly, and not under a veil of nice words, pleasant sounding rhetoric. I've been able to preach about this directly. I've been able to teach about this directly. And it's been very well received. The message is that our friends, our neighbors, our coworkers are under threat, constant threat. Just this morning, as I was on my way to work, I saw something that made my heart drop to my feet. It was a nice looking truck, a commercial vehicle pulled over on the side of the road, right here in downtown Fort Myers, 6 Lee County Sheriff's deputies behind it. 6. Everyone inside that commercial vehicle was a person that appeared to be of Hispanic origin. And who knows what the outcome was? Who knows if they were able to go on their way, go to work, run their errands, do whatever it is they needed to do for their business, for themselves, for their families? Or were they taken? Were they detained? Were they arrested without cause? Were they denied their rights? And so when I see something like that, it's not just enough to be outraged. It's not just enough to shake your head and think to yourself, man, somebody ought to do something about that. We have to get involved. We are the somebody to do something about that. And to that end, on not this Sunday, but the following Sunday, the 19th, the theme of worship service at our church that Sunday is Homecoming Sunday. It is a Sunday of service where we're calling together thought leaders and other faith leaders and college students and activists who are local and people of conscience to come and worship with us that day. I have a special message prepared that is solely on this topic, solely on the need for activism, the need for us to get involved, the need for us to do something to assist those who are being detained wrongfully and without charge, who many of whom are American citizens without criminal records. We're going to have a meal after that service. And then we're going to take the Coalition of the Willing down to the Everglades Detention Center, where I'm going to lead the service down there, the prayer vigil that day from 5 to 6. And we're taking as many people as possible, as many people who are willing to roll up their sleeves and do something about this, because that's the only way it's going to get better. So I am blessed to be able to actively deal with this in a direct way that is meaningful.
Thank you. If I can go now to Reverend Fisher Stewart. I know you're in Washington, and perhaps we're talking very much about Florida issues, but I am curious how you've addressed immigration.
Good evening, everyone, and really thank you. It's so good to be with everyone for this most important conversation. And as you said, I am in Washington, D.C., which has been occupied by Donald Trump. And as you can see, I call it out. Donald Trump, MAGA, I will list them all in my sermons because it's gotten to the point that if we don't call it out, it's just going to get worse. And so we're in a country now that seems to have lost its mind. And I won't say lost its direction, because there's always been a fear of those who are not straight, white, male, Protestant, and so-called American. But it seems like those beliefs are on steroids now. And I believe the church, the faith community really needs to step up and call out what's going on. What we see going on in Florida and other places are really manifestations of what has been going on in this country for a very long time. Immigrants right now are an easy target because we are told they don't have any rights, although they do have rights. And so if we think about the craziness that's going on, having two sides, as we look at this, as we get a view from 30,000 feet, the MAGA side has been adept at marketing and branding and capitalizing on white people's and white adjacent people's fears that they just might lose control of this country. And so MAGA and Trump have convinced their followers, who might not all be people of faith, but they are people who are frightened for their future. They have convinced them that this MAGA Heritage Foundation belief in a theocratic oligarchy, a theocracy that's created in their own image, ruled by rich white men, is the way to go to secure scared people's future. And so MAGA has convinced these folks that they were here first, that they have waited in line for what they believe is theirs, and that all these other people, women, blacks, LGBT, immigrants, are busting in line in front of them and taking what is theirs. And unfortunately, on the other side, and we don't really have a name for us, and truth be told, we're not really clear on what we want. I do believe that if the church or faith communities, to which I believe all of us who are on this call, on this Zoom, would use our voices, get our leadership, those who have judicators, to counteract the MAGA message, we could defeat them. But as you said, I'm afraid there are not enough of us who are willing to step up and call out for whatever reason, and call it out from the pulpit, because if it doesn't come from the pulpit, a lot of people won't believe it. And so the other side uses the pulpit to maximum advantage. But except for a few ministers and preachers and those on this Zoom, it doesn't seem that we are willing to take the risk and risk the institution to do what needs to be done. And so I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think so. So I look forward to this conversation.
Reverend Williamson, you are nodding your head.
Yeah, I would really appreciate Dr. Fisher-Stewart's truth-telling and invitation to tell, I'll say, my story truthfully so that I may be healed. So I belong to that group identity of straight, white, male Protestant. And I think it's so important in the messaging that I have to model for others in my group that it is immigrant justice and anti-racism work is not anti-me. It is not replace me. It is humanize me and others, right? So I try to model that in my message to folks, because I'm not appointed to a local church right now. I'm in an extension ministry appointment in which I support clergy, congregations, and communities all over the state. And my message has been we're called to love our neighbor, and things like that detention center in the Everglades are a political expression of hatred for our neighbor. And when I hear the oft criticism that I hear from a lot of church people toward preachers is, Pastor, you need to stick to pastoring and stay out of politics. And I said, well, whenever politicians do harm with their policies, I'm going to speak up about it because we're called to love our neighbor. And so my message has been to those who have power to shut down Alligator Alcatraz and to stop replicating that model elsewhere in Florida, and to stop requiring collaboration with the federal customs enforcement officers, stop requiring our state police, our local police, our sheriff's department to collaborate with them as a way of recognizing that would be an act of love for our neighbor, to do those things and stop traumatizing and terrorizing our neighbors. And that's my message to anybody who will listen. Dr. Meyer mentioned the vigils going on. I'm a part of the one in Tallahassee in proximity to the people who could, in a stroke of a pen, stop this madness in Florida. So that's my message that I share with folks.
Thank you, Reverend. I would like to now talk to Betty Osceola. Betty, I'm curious what your discussions have been, for instance, inside the Panther Clan? Like, what are the discussions about? Obviously, the Miccosukee tribe has been on the front lines on what's been going on at the detention facility. I'm wondering just sort of what has been the discussions inside the tribe about how to proceed on immigration.
Well, thank you for having me here today. And as we all know, some of us on this panel aren't new to being persecuted, right? Native Americans and people being brought over to this country for whatever purpose. So, you know, my ancestors, you know, of the Panther Clan, we're the warriors of our people. And it's our responsibility to stand up to protect our people. And so this isn't something new. We're always standing up to defend ourselves, to defend the environment, to defend something. So here, every day, you know, tribal members are like, what's up with that facility? If you don't want to call it what they're calling it, the FAA calls that site TNT. We usually, those of us that are collaborating and strategizing, we call it the TNT site, because when we're following the flight paths and stuff, that's what it's going to be labeled as, is TNT, if you don't want to say the other word that they call it. But they're worried about, as history shows us, at one point in time when the colonizers came over to this country to take the land, they rounded up people and put them in the same way they're doing now, except, you know, to keep us contained so they could take our lands. And so when we talk about this, we're like, okay, you know, some people are like, they put it so close to us that they're probably going to try to round us up and stick us in there too, and as another land grab. And unfortunately, we know behind the scenes what they're whispering, what they plan to do with that land once they finish with detaining people there. They plan to take the land and develop into something else. And for us, when I look at it, they're using immigration as a stepping stone for their political career, but they're also trying to take that land as well. And the vehicle that they decided to drive through that door was the vehicle of immigration, and trying to kill two birds with one stone. And they don't plan to leave. They plan to convert it into something else on a permanent basis. We've already heard whisperings of that from different individuals throughout the state who are afraid to talk out publicly against what is going on, because they're worried about what could happen to their families, what could happen to their careers. But for myself, you know, I have no choice but to stand up, because we do know when they come for them, eventually they're going to come for you. And history tends to repeat itself. So someone has to stand up. But so our community has been more vigilant as to the vehicle traffic. We've seen Border Patrol out here. One of our community members mentioned that there was Border Patrol in front of his house a few days ago. And when he came out of his house to see what they were up to, they drove away. But he was like, why were they parked in front of my house? And so we're kind of hyper vigilant as to what is going on out here, because, you know, myself and others, if we were pulled, and we worry about when we're driving around the state, if we get pulled over, many of us look like the individuals that they're rounding up. And and what we're hearing, when they're not worrying about, you know, they're taking away IDs, they're not checking, they're just taking people. You know what? And we see that, we hear that happening with tribal people from other states, where they have been detained and picked up, and their tribe has had to step in to reclaim their enrolled tribal member. So but we're fortunate that we have a tribe here, and there's tribes in the United States that their tribes can stand up for them. And unfortunately, there's these other individuals that are being taken don't have that. And when we're outside doing the prayer vigils, you know, I do other things as well to advocate about what is going on. But when the prayer vigils are held, yes, it gets hot. Sometimes there's mosquitoes. Sometimes it's sprinkles. Sometimes there's lightning. but we can get in our cars and go home. The individuals at the facility are there. They would probably be happy to be on the side of the road with us, getting bit by mosquitoes out on the side of the road, where knowing that they can get a car and drive home, versus being contained 24/7 with the lights on and being bit up by mosquitoes. And in a structure that they have to worry about, like if lightning strikes, what's going to happen, because the facility is ran by generators with a lot of fuel. All it takes is one lightning strike to hit a generator, and it's going to be like a bomb going off. So I think about those things. And, you know, with the environmental lawsuit, because I was raised to treat the environment as if it were a human being, and that it's our relatives, and we respect everything in that environment as human beings. And we say that, you know, if you can't respect the environment, how do you expect to respect yourself and others? It's all related together in how we treat ourselves and creation. And when I talk to other people, and, you know, they don't, you know, it's not their issue or whatever, but they talk about how, because I'm not with an organized church, but I'm a very spiritual person. That's how I was raised. Mm-hmm. But I ask those individuals who do go to church and who talk about Jesus and God and scripture, and I'm like, okay, then what would Jesus do? What would Jesus do? Would he stand back and ignore everything that's going on, or is he going to do what he did in the past, was to embrace these individuals and to help these individuals and stand up for these individuals? And yes, he died on the cross for everyone's sins, to be able to go into afterlife, to move on. But yet we talk about how much we carry God's word. I hear a lot of people saying that. We say "Fajashiyumachit" means best maker in my language, and we're always taught you walk Creator's path. It never deviates. That's only one path. Man-made laws, man-made paths always changes whichever the way the wind blows at the time. But Creator's path, there's only one path that you have to walk. Sometimes you stray, but you're always able to come back. So if we're walking that path and we're going to these places of worship, wherever it is, whatever it looks like, and we come out, you know, if you're not holy only on that day of service, it's every day. That's how I was taught. We walk Creator's path every single day. So, you know, our people, you know, we talk about that. You know, we don't understand the mentality of what is going on right now, because we understand how we were raised and how we were taught to, you know, to walk Creator's path. And we have those conversations about, you know, the outside world needs to wake up and come back to their Creator's path, which is the same as ours. We just call the individual and the beings by different terminology. But someone created us. Someone gave us their breath, and we share it with the whole world around us. So we keep wondering, when is the rest of humanity going to wake up and be human beings again? And that's the reoccurring theme that we have, is to be human beings, to treat each other as human beings. And, you know, and they just hear the word immigrant. Yes, the children of immigrants forgot they're immigrants. But, you know, and now they've taken the word immigrant and made it something so evil and derogatory that it needs to be conquered and killed and put out of view. And so how do we humanize these individuals? How do we bring the face of humanity back to these individuals that are being targeted? And, you know, when I first did the first prayer vigil, and then the Interfaith Alliance, you know, picked up the ball and ran with it, which is awesome. They're doing a great job. The message that I receive, because I pray a lot, I pray every day, just like we're all doing all the time, the people here on the panel. And, you know, the message I got, as if someone were standing right next to me while I was praying outside of that center, is when I asked Creator, how can I help you? Let me help you. Guide me to help you. What do you need me to do? I'm here to help you. I always pray that way. It's like, I'm here to help you. How do you need me to help you about what is going on right now? And just as if someone was standing right next to me, very clear. I need human beings. I need people to be human beings again. And that's why the direction I've been taking all along is to try to help bring human beings back to their maker, to remind those that have forgotten how to be good human beings, is to bring them back to being those human beings, because that path, you can always come back to that path. But they forget that. And I would hope other individuals out there would really think about, if you're so spiritually connected and you really believe in what those scriptures say, then ask yourself, what would Jesus do today? I'm pretty sure he wouldn't be looking the other way. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Reverend Robles, I wanted to give you a chance to answer that first question, which is, how are you approaching the issue of immigration, these immigration detention facilities right now? I know your church is in Miami, and I know there is a great deal of fear among so many communities right now in South Florida. So tell us.
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the panel. And as you all were speaking, it made me think of this quote attributed to St. Francis of Assisi, which is, preach always, use words when necessary. And that is what I try to do, is to live as Jesus would want me to, not just to preach from the pulpit on Sunday morning for that 20 minutes, but to try to really live as I think Jesus would want me to. So I've been also a part of these prayer vigils that have been happening outside of TNT, Alligator Alcatraz, the Everglade Detention Center. And I'm so grateful for all the clergy and all the individuals and Betty Osceola for being out there every week to keep those going. And then inviting my own members of my congregation to come out as well, and making sure that that's out on social media. So grateful for Betty Osceola for her streaming every single week those prayer vigils. Just finding ways to make people know, first of all, that it's still open. A lot of people think that that detention center has been closed. And actually, the other day in my sermon, I asked, where are those individuals? Over 1,000 individuals just went missing that were in the detention center. So where have they gone? I just don't understand how there's not even more of an outrage over that. When we talk about human beings, these are human beings that have disappeared and we don't know where they are. Yeah, so I'm very open talking about it with my congregation and encouraging us to be active. I'm also part of a clergy group that has written asking that we be allowed, each from our perspective, religious background, to be able to go into the detention center and offer spiritual care for those that need it. And we've been denied access. And we continue to ask why we can't be given that access. So
I'd like to jump on that, if I might, with Amanda Velasquez. Can you tell us what the law says about access to being able to hold these services?
Sure. So the procedures manual for the detention center says that it is required to provide reasonable and equitable opportunities to participate in the practices of their respective faiths to the extent compatible with security and medical requirements. Facilities must ensure all religions represented in the detained population have equal status without discrimination based on an individual's race, ethnicity, religion, national origin, gender, sexual orientation, or disability. So, yeah, that's really amazing. I mean, and I understand, the feeling of like not having access to your client, not having access to your parishioners or to your congregation. That's something that is, it's a you know, it's shocking, really, that you've been asking to go see them and that they've said no. I mean, I think part of the problem is that, you know, well, it's one of the big issues is that, you know, when we're talking about due process rights under the Fifth Amendment, um, this is the amendment that sort of should control or does control immigration detentions. It's not a criminal proceeding. It's not a criminal, um, you know, when we talk about people who have already been convicted of crimes, that falls under the Eighth Amendment issues, where, you know, we hear about like punishment is legal as long as it's not cruel and unusual. But that's not what this is. This falls under Fifth Amendment civil detentions, and so, you know, I see like federal prisons and county jails having more protections, more access to due process rights, and that the immigration detention centers, you know, seem to have. The other issue is that they're not consistent. They're not consistent at all with what the standards that they apply. You might go to one detention center that has really high standards and you know, accessibility. Chrome, for example, here in South Florida, I can go see a client anytime I want. I don't have to make an appointment. I can show up at 11 o'clock at night, you know, and I can schedule a virtual hearing and I'll be on the phone or on a tablet with my client within the 24 hours. You know, they have relatively decent standards, and you know, they're a little overbooked right now, but their standards at that detention center are pretty good. And then you hear about other centers where none of that is being applied. So it's really shocking, and not surprising, to be honest, not surprising at all.
I'd like to. Oh, go ahead.
Real quick question. We
Sure.
have a request that if Amanda could somehow copy that legal language and put it into the chat, it would be
Sure.
helpful.
Of course.
I'd like to open this up to everyone. Reverend, did you want to say something, Reverend Williamson?
Yeah, I just wanted to real quickly piggyback on Reverend Robles and also what Amanda shared about the legal access requirements for chaplaincy services. We're delivering the letter requesting chaplaincy access in the Everglades facility and elsewhere to the director of Florida Emergency Management Services tomorrow at 10 o'clock. It would be the fourth attempt to get a response from that request. And it was initially delivered to the governor, to the state attorney, and to the director of Emergency Management Services, the three of them. And it was the Emergency Management Services director that replied, the only of the three that replied, with a comment like, well, they're going to be closing that facility soon, or there's hardly anybody there, sort of after the stay order was given, and didn't say anything more about it. Now that it's obviously ramping up and still running, we want an answer to echo what Reverend Robles said. And so tomorrow there's 8 clergy in Tallahassee that are going to show up at 10 o'clock at the director's office, and grateful for Reverend Jones for his support with providing press coverage of that event as well. And so just ask that you all, as people of faith, to ask for a compassionate response. You know, I mean, this is a step that we're trying to take that would support folks directly being targeted.
I'd like to open up this next question to the panel, and I'll just let you sort of raise your hand if you want to address this. Vice President J.D. Vance has publicly stated in this America First philosophy that it's rooted in the Christian concepts, the order of love, that it is Christian to take care of your own first. And I've wondered if you've heard some of these themes when perhaps you address the issue of immigration to your own in your own churches. If you have heard people push back, and I know Reverend Williamson, you said that you've heard this idea of pastors should stay out of politics, but I'm just wondering if you've heard had any pushback on this idea of bringing up immigration and this idea that it is Christian to defend your own first. Does anybody want to address that? Reverend Russell Meyer?
The vice president is no theologian and should never be confused as being one. Let's just begin there. And he couldn't be any farther from the truth. That's why both Pope Francis and Pope Leo have said so. There's an old proverb that, charity begins at home, and, fix your own house first. Those are American proverbs, right? And they're lifted up in particular rejection of the gospel of Jesus, who says, love your enemies and do good to those who hate you. Or the Apostle Paul, who says, don't use your freedom for your own benefit. Your freedom is to help your neighbor in need. So the New Testament and the Hebrew scriptures couldn't be any clearer about our duty to the foreign-born in our midst to be treated as one of our own. So even if there was a kernel of truth in what the vice president says, the foreign-born is included in that category as family. It's not excluded. We need to see ourselves as the immigrant, as the same as the one being detained. And indeed, in what's happening in public policy today, the harm that's being done by putting brown-skinned people in detention is the same harm we are all going to be experiencing in our healthcare costs. It's the same harm we're all going to be experiencing in our public education. It's the same harm we're all experiencing in fear. I mean, I know pastors who are afraid to touch issues because it'll blow up in their congregation because they know they have people across the waterfront. And we are all being imprisoned by this dehumanization. We are all losing our humanity here. And the vice president represents that when he makes remarks like that. He's lost his own humanity when he says something like that.
Did anyone want to address that question as well? I thought I saw another hand. Yes, please go ahead.
What Reverend Meyer is saying, we were once all aliens, right? Right. I mean, that's scripture. As you say, that other stuff is made up. But what happens is that people will take that and run with it because there's no one to say that's not scriptural. Or what you're listening to is really, pardon my language, a bastardization of the gospel. And so those of us who are willing to take a risk and to stand up and say it, they say, we don't know where you're getting that from. That's wrong. That's just absolutely wrong. And I have told folks, I said, show it to me in the Bible. Go get a Bible and show it to me. Now, of course, they can't because they haven't opened a Bible, right? So they can't show it to me. So it's up to us to push back and to, it says, love your neighbor. You were once an alien. All of that stuff that is in the gospel, how we treat people. As Betty was saying, Jesus died for our sins. Well, God also took human form to show us how to be human, right? God took human form in the form of Jesus to show us how to be human. And we need to teach and preach that as opposed to being afraid that we're going to lose money if people walk out. Money can be very evil, even in the church, because we're afraid to speak because folks may walk and take their checkbooks. And I say walk. Maybe the church will right size And when it gets down to a workable number, we might actually have true disciples. So do whatever it takes to preach the gospel that Jesus came to show us how to be human and that we don't have to live the way we do. We don't have to live in this great land that has all these resources. We don't have to live the way we do. And when we look at it and we have people demonizing immigrants because they're taking services, immigrants pay $80 billion a year in taxes. Taxes they will not receive benefits from. Why do they pay taxes? Because they want one day to get on the citizenship path. And when they go in, they'll ask, how have you supported yourself in this country? And they will pull out more tax records than any American ever would, because they know they have to prove how they have not been on the dole. Because this country, Internal Revenue Service, will not give them, you can't get a Social Security number, but you can get a taxpayer identification number and file your taxes. And that's what immigrants are doing. They're filing taxes. They're paying into a system that they can't benefit from. And so if you take that money out of our system, we're really going to be hurting.
I want to let our observers, our audience know that we're going to open up the panel to questions. I'm going to throw one more question. I don't know who wants to take it, but I am curious. Maybe one of you can raise your hand. We've been talking a lot about how you've addressed the topic of immigration and detention facilities, the crackdown on immigration with your parishioner, with your church. I'm curious whether you have seen firsthand the impact on this crackdown on immigration. If you've felt it firsthand, how it's impacted Hispanics, anyone dealing with immigration issues within your own church. Has anybody felt that firsthand?
I'm not in a church, but we see fewer Latinos going to church on Sunday. They're not going to work. They're not sending their kids to school because they're afraid. ICE is showing up at schools, elementary schools, junior high schools, high schools. And so people are afraid. And so the daily lives of Latinos and other immigrants is being negatively affected. They won't go to the store. They won't go to the doctor. They just won't. And that's a problem, because ICE and everybody, they're everywhere. They're everywhere. And so people are afraid to just live. And that's a problem.
Thank you, Reverend Fisher Stewart. I will say that I have observed on my own. I attend a Catholic church in Southwest Florida, and I usually attend the Spanish Mass, and I've noticed a significant drop in how busy that church has been over the last 6 months or so. So thank you for sharing that. Bill,
Sandra?
oh, sure, go ahead, Reverend.
We just had our annual clergy meeting, and our Latino pastors were telling us that they're not holding services in their sanctuaries anymore. They've developed a house church system so that their people can continue and gather in prayer in small groups, but they're really changing their whole way of doing ministry. We don't know what that looks like for them in the long run. How do you pay the light bill for the sanctuary and that sort of thing? But people are trying to stay out of the pathway of ICE and police. It has changed their habits, as has been described already.
Okay. Bill, forgive me, I don't know. I can't see you right now, so I don't know if you are getting any questions that
Yes.
we want to pass on to our panelists right now.
Yeah, just a couple, and then we can go into the open questions. A couple of them is what would they would like to know how to find the streaming link for the Everglades Vigil for to respond to with an action agenda. How do we find out? How do we get that link for streaming? Does anybody have that link that could put it in the chat?
I stream off my Facebook, Betty Osceola.
Okay.
Oh.
Thank you
And
for that.
also, yeah, myself and the Workers Circle that helps organize the events behind the scenes also streams as well. But anyone can go to my Facebook Live. And I also have TikTok, so I usually stream on the TikTok and the Facebook.
And just to follow up on that, is it possible for anybody to join the prayer visuals that are being streamed?
Yeah, it's my page is public, so whoever wants to join the live is welcome to join the live, and whoever wants to, if in person, if they're able to, it's open to anyone who arrives in a good way.
And a couple questions, but really boil down to this. How can we support detainees once they're deported? And maybe that's a question for our immigrant lawyer.
When can I add into that? Maybe we can open the question, how does one support an individual when they're detained and or deported? If we can maybe open it to that.
One of the first questions I always get from family members or friends who have had, a loved one detained is, how do we locate them? So I'll put it in the chat. It's the ICE locator page. You can locate, in theory, ideally you can locate somebody through that page. It doesn't always work right away. But if they have already a case filed with immigration and they've got an A number, it's usually easier to find that person with their A number. So my advice to all of my clients is, before anything happens, hopefully nothing happens to you or a loved one, but if something does, just, have all of your documentation, with somebody that you trust and that will be able to have access to your information, because the sooner that I can get that information from family members and friends, the sooner I can track down that person. And so that's would be step one, how to support somebody is, before it even happens, have your ducks in a row, so to speak. If somebody is detained, it's a really tough question, because every day it seems like more and more options are being removed. For example, right now, pretty much anybody who gets detained that entered through an irregular way through the border is no longer eligible for bonds anymore. The only people who are still would be considered eligible for bond are those folks who entered legally with a visa, even though they may have overstayed, but at least they were admitted legally into the country, so they would still be bond eligible. Nobody else is at this point. So what that looks like on the ground is that if you are somebody who crossed the border, you might be an asylum seeker, you might have an asylum case pending, you might have a valid work authorization, driver's license, all of the things that you're supposed to have and that you're supposed to be doing. It doesn't matter. You're still going to get detained if you enter through the border, if you come into ICE contact, and you will not be eligible for bond. So that person then has to make a decision about whether they want to continue to fight their case while they're detained, which they can do, or not. And so, and that can be a very long process, obviously a very difficult process. So, how to support somebody who's already been detained is, do they have viable claims of persecution? Do they have good evidence? Things like that, are helpful to try to get their cases won. But bond is no longer a possibility for the majority of people who are getting detained. So, and then if somebody is removed, Unfortunately, that idea of like, well, just go back home and then get back in line and you'll be able to come back really quickly is not really an option. It might be for a few, but most people will not have that option. So a lot of folks sometimes don't want to fight their cases because they know they're going to be detained for several months, and would rather take like a voluntary departure, thinking that they'll be able to come back, really relatively quickly. That isn't always the case. There's a lot of great, services. I'm a private practitioner, but there's a lot of great, services, legal services in our communities that provide pro bono advice or low bono if somebody can't afford a private attorney. I'm happy to answer questions for people all day long, just at least guide them in the right direction, whether I end up representing that individual or not. But at least I think the best thing to do and that you can share with your congregations is to have documents ready, have somebody that they trust, with their information ready. And that goes for like powers of attorney, if they have minor children, bank accounts that all of a sudden somebody gets detained and nobody can access their bank account because there's no power of attorney, things like that. Titles to vehicles, to cars, maybe the family needs to sell the car or go pick it up from the tow yard because it got towed when they got pulled over. Master Jones was saying, who knows if those guys were picked up or not, what happened to that van. Anyway, those ahead of time, don't wait for something to happen. I think that's the best advice I could give, is to get those kinds of documentations and things in order. Names, something really simple, like memorize your loved one's phone numbers. They will give you one phone call and then they'll take your phone and you don't remember anybody's phone number. And it might be 3 or 4 days before you can have access to a phone to make a phone call. And you're not showing up on the ICE locator page and your family doesn't know where you are. So memorize somebody's phone number so that if they take your phone, you can remember, I can't tell you how many times I've had people, it takes them a week or 2 weeks before they can even like remember or contact somebody else. And then that person contacts a family member. Things like that. It seems like common sense, but you don't think about it until it happens to you or to your loved one, so that's probably the best advice I could give about how to help somebody once they, before they get detained, get those things in order first in case it happens.
Amanda, can I jump on that question and ask, I as far as the low, the resources where the fees are either none or low, for people to be able to afford it, where would one find those lists? Like, does it exist anywhere?
Yeah, Catholic Legal Services is a big one, but they're saturated obviously with cases, and they can't, like any resources are. American Immigrant Justice Center also. I'll put some links in the chat of different organizations that are providing those services. And they'll be able to help some folks. They won't be able to help everybody, but at least it's a starting point. So yeah, I'd be happy to share that information.
Good. I did put Amanda's website link in the chat as well.
Thank you.
And then there was a comment from some folks in Central Florida. They have a interfaith group, and I will make them. They've asked that I make their contact available to each of you, so I will send that to each of you after the session. And I think we can open it up. Amanda, is there anything you want to do before we open it up?
Yes, Bill was saying we wanted to give everybody a few moments to on the panel to make their closing remarks. And I think maybe I can have at least one of you address whether you have hope that this country will be able to come to a solution on immigration. Obviously, we haven't seen real immigration reform in certainly over a decade. And so I'm wondering if you have hope that this country will come to a resolution that will, I would say, come up with a more sane solution to how we handle immigration in this country. Reverend Russell Meyer, would you like to start?
Well, kind of you to ask me to go first. I the first thing I want to say is when we see ourselves as the same as the immigrant, that we see no daylight between us and the immigrant, when we understand our interrelatedness is so profound that their fate is tied up with our fate, that their destiny is our destiny. Our hope lies in realizing that our humanity is shared. You can't break it up. And that what is currently happening in our country is the use of the pejorative immigrant to actually take over all of us. And so the second most funded military force in the world, the second most funded military force in the world is ICE, right behind the Pentagon. And that's what the one big beautiful bill did. The same bill that's going to take away health care from 20, perhaps 30 million people. All of this is tied up. We're in the middle of a government shutdown. Nothing shut down ICE, right? And so we have to identify completely with those who are being sought and kidnapped and put in enslavement camps, because that's what they are. The way people are being tracked down and put in based upon their appearance. And when we fully identify with those who are suffering hurt and harm in the name of the nation, that's when we'll find our hope. This is no longer a question about comprehensive immigration reform. I've worked on that for over 25 years. I could go through the politics on that and why we don't have it. What is happening right now to the immigrant is what is happening to every one of the rest of us who's not considered the immigrant.
Oh, did we?
Freedoms that FDR talked about. Let's remove those from us. And our hope is going to be in totally identifying with them and then coming together as the human entity that says, no, we're not going to live that way. We're going to realize the fullness of our consciousness, the fullness of our goodwill, the plurality and diversity among us, that the Creator, that God, however we talk about it, has meant for us to discover our future by the diversity that is within us. All these people bring wonderful things into the social conversation that will, from which will emerge the pathway for us to heal the world and to see prosperity. And perhaps our children or our grandchildren will know a world without violence. And when we fully identify with those who are suffering, that's where our hope lies.
Thank you, Reverend. Reverend Fisher Stewart.
I believe our hope lies in the faith community, which has power. And that power can be used either for good or evil. And so we're going to have to counteract the evil that people are seeing and calling Jesus, calling Christianity. And so we're going to have to cross over even more denominational lines and faith lines so that our voice is stronger than the other side. And until our voice is stronger than the other side, we're not going to see a whole lot done. But we have the power to make a difference. And what we need to do is use that power to deal with the hell here on earth, as opposed to still trying to preach people to heaven.
Thank you. Reverend Robles.
Yeah, I think hope is a big word. Hope. As a Christian, I have to have hope, and I agree that it's really up to us, our interconnectedness between each other. We know that if one of us suffers, we all suffer. And so we have to really lean in on each other and use our voices to especially lift up those that are too scared to have a voice right now. And I think that that's really where my hope lies, is the Jesus that I know was in the margins with those that were outcasted, that were the untouchables, the orphans, the widows, the strangers. That's where Jesus was. And if we as a church can make sure to speak up, then yeah, I have some good hope there.
Reverend Jones.
Wow. Hope.
Or
I
closing
cast
thoughts.
I cast my hope in the divine and God. Um, I'm too old to blindly trust people. Being a member of a historically oppressed section of God's people, I cannot afford to trust. I cannot, as a former member of the media, I do not trust the media because the concern is all about ratings. They look at it in a zero sum way. Well, no, this isn't an autocracy. He wouldn't go that far, would he? But what if he did? Let's cover it. Everything's about whataboutism. Everything there's the easier way out is just to wash it, right? And so if we can't rely on the media to ask the questions that will illuminate the problem so that we can get solutions to the problem. And if we can't blindly trust in churches as an institution to help meaningfully address the wrongs, because half of churches are led by leaders who agree with these things, who like these things. If we can't trust our government, who is currently waging war on decency, waging war on Christianity, waging war on migrants, waging war on decency, then all we can do is trust each other and trust God, because that's all we got. That's all we got. And so this job is magnified. I think everyone in this room on this panel can agree that being a clergy person in this moment is already lonely. Now it's lonelier. It was already difficult before. Now it's more difficult. You were already isolated to a certain extent. Now you're more isolated because now you're having congregants come to you and say, Pastor, help me understand this. Give me some good news. What's God up to? And we don't know. We trust, but we don't know. I wish I had answers to give people. I don't. And sometimes this makes sense to me, and sometimes it makes absolutely no sense. So I'm hoping that we can share our contact information. I know some of the people on the panel, I know a lot of people on the panel. I hope we can share contact info so that we can support each other. Because I really do think for our own mental wellness, we need that.
Thank you. Betty Osceola, your closing remarks.
Well, I always have hope. You know, my ancestors were, they attempted to eradicate us, but they didn't get all of us because I'm still here and we're still here. And as with other individuals, they're still here. And, you know, so there's always hope. And there is light at the end of the tunnel. but it's going to be a very hard, devastating road to get to the end of that road. And there's going to be some loss of people, a loss of systems, and how there's going to be an evolution of the people to understand that there is a better way. And, you know, to me, what I see is this big spiritual war. You're with the light and the dark. America is in a big spiritual war. And, you know, and Creator is going to win in the end. And when you look through history as to what has happened in history through different times, different centuries, you've had this. You've had groups of people persecuting other people, and you've had those individuals cast out and migrate to other lands and to find their way. But to me, when Creator says he wants to see who the human beings are, he's seeing who the human beings are, and who have forgotten their human beings. And they're going to be taken care of. Either they're going to realize and come back to what that path is of Creator, or they're going to end up in another realm for whatever it is that they refuse to see. But there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And my people have a saying, the world you know today is not the world you know tomorrow, but that of your ancestors. And there is going to be a future for the generations of all our people, but it's going to look different than what it does today and how we go about as a society. Because Creator is going to find his human beings. And those are the ones that are going to be at the end of that road where that light is, walking out of the darkness into the light. That's what's going to happen. That's what's going to be given. It goes back to Reverend Joe's saying, all we have is ourselves in God. People may not want to worry about what that's going to look like, but I have hope. I know that because do you live for yourself or do you live for others? And if you live for others, as you're doing, and with your congregations, then you have lived what Creator wanted you to live, is to live for others, to help others. And it's also, and I recognize the fact years ago that we can't save everybody, but we can save those that we can. And those are the ones that are going to be walking out of that darkness into the light at the end of the tunnel for the future generations. And we're talking about immigration, but that may not be what that system is tomorrow in the future. It may be a society is going to go through an evolution of what their priorities are. Because everything that is happening today, those are man-made. Those are all man-made. You know, man-made creations of laws of who's an immigrant or not. That's not God's law. That's not Creator's law. It's gonna come back. So for me, I've made that realization is that I have to do what I can to help these current generations of my people and whoever that comes along with the prayer or the prayer walks, so that they understand that we have to help that next generation be the ones to walk that better path. Because we have a lot of people that don't want to walk a better path. And we're not going to be able to save everyone. And maybe not everybody is meant to be saved. They all have a different purpose. They're all going to have that other purpose when they go on into their afterlife. But their destiny is going to be determined on if they come back to Creator's path. And so there is hope. You know, immigration may not be the conversation of tomorrow. We have a prophecy that, the children of the rainbow come together. You know, like a rainbow, all those colors that make that rainbow. They're going to come together and walk in a different way and live together in a different way. And so that's how I see it. Because immigration is a man-made thing. It's not God's creation. It's not Jesus's creation. It's a man-made creation. And man-made creation at the time, when they want to be like God, you know what happens in history, right? They get struck down. A flood happens. Places get destroyed. And that's where I see we're going, is that individuals are starting to want to be like God, to make decisions like God. So those societies that are wanting to be that way are going to be changed. And,
Betty, thank you. Thank you so much for your comments. And Sandra and Bill, I think we're going to take the two hands that are up, Bishop Stokes and Reverend Staples. And then I have some closing remarks. This is Jim Nathan that's not showing on the screen. And just a very brief closing remarks, and then we'll stay on. Panelists are welcome to stay, and we'll stay on and chat with for another 15 or 20 minutes with folks that would like to do so.
Jim,
So,
can I jump in
yes,
real quick?
please, Sandra.
Reverend Williamson did not get a
Oh,
final
I'm so
word.
sorry.
Could
I'm
we
so
just,
sorry.
Reverend Williamson, did you
Yes,
did you want
okay,
to
and
speak?
then, yes, and then Bishop Stokes, and then Barry and Staples, and
Yes.
then we'll close out. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I just appreciate everything that everybody's already said, and I'll just amen to that and say God does God's best work in the dark.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. And sorry, Reverend Williamson, we're honored to have you this evening. We're going to just do these two concluding comments from participants tonight. Bishop Stokes, followed by Reverend Staples, and then some closing remarks. And then please stay on if you'd like to chat a little longer.
Hi. It's not a comment as much as a question, but I guess it's a question with a comment. And I'm really grateful to all of you for the conversation and the experiences that you all have. I was the Bishop of New Jersey. I retired to Florida. I'm living in St. Augustine. And I was really I just learned about this event last week or the week before and was excited to see it. And part of that was that it was faith leaders on immigration in Florida. And so strength comes in unified numbers. And I wondered, those who've been around, is there one cohesive group or organization in Florida that pulls all the groups and individuals who are committed to resistance to this inhumanity together so that the strength of the numbers and the message is clear and evident?
I'm happy to address that. Am I on mute? Happy to address that. There's really not a single organization. There are many, and over the last year, especially since last November's election, more and more are trying to figure out how to collaborate to do this. So, under the No Kings concept and the peaceful protests that have been going on, you're starting to see more organizations coming together. We're very fragmented, and so many people have had their passions and energy and interest around certain specific things, whether it be racial justice or environment or whatever. But we lose everything if we lose democracy. So finding ways to bring people together, but there's not a single organization by itself, and that we're aware of. I know that Reverend Meyer, in trying to bring many of the churches together, is trying to do that. But do you have a comment on that, Reverend Meyer?
Just simply that the model that's really emerging is not some kind of central command. That's what's creating this problem. The real model is embedded networks and the ways in which we manifest the interconnectivity that is what life is about, and then finding ways of however we organize organically or whatever, staying as deeply well connected as we can. Florida is a very large place. It's constantly growing. It's new people, new things are happening, and so the power of networking is the secret sauce.
Great, thank you. Reverend Staples. You're on mute. Varian, you're on mute. Where'd he go?
It says he's in the waiting room.
We don't even have a waiting room. Bill, do you know where he went?
Okay.
So, you're on now? Varian, okay. We lost you
Miracle.
at the key moment, yes.
Praise the Lord. Faith without works is dead. We are all people of faith, no matter what. There's a couple of things I just want to make a comment about. And we're talking about immigration here. And I'm just going to go real quick. There's different things that America did. We had voluntary migration, where people have, slaves, for example, they migrated north, as Claude Brown said, into the promised land, going to Chicago like my family did, picking cotton in Mississippi and singing, and then end up working with Reverend Dr. King. I'm part of the civil rights movement. I've seen this thing for a lot of years. I'm a lot older than what I look. Involuntary migration, annexation, and colonialism. That's what is really bothering me. A lot of people think about Abraham Lincoln as being a great emancipator. Abraham Lincoln believed in this. He wanted to send slaves back to Africa, to Liberia, the colonial, and that's where we are right now. So we have an attack on brown folks. But let me tell you, I'm from Chicago. My phone's been ringing off the hook all week long. They identify people, and Governor Pritzker said it, by the way people look. Now they've identified black folks and brown folks specifically. Don't get it. We're talking about white supremacy. And the thing about the church is important. My good friend of mine, she's an author. She used to write for the Naples Press. Angela Dinker has a book out, Red State Christians, and she just released another one, Disciples of the White Jesus. We're dealing with white supremacy that's honed into this whole situation that we're going through right now. And all of us gather here today. I hear a lot of people, someone said something about, I think Reverend talked about feeling what other people are feeling. Charlie Kirk would say, lynch all of us for having empathy. That is a new age word that doesn't fit. So I'm just saying, if we're going to do something, we have to do work. We have faith, all of us do. Now we have to go to work and do something. When I was marching during those days, when I was just a kid in the 60s, in the 70s, singing We Shall Overcome with my family, I know what that work means. I don't know if I can do much marching, but I can help people get in step. Okay, can I get an amen out there? So,
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Nathan. So I just want to say to all of you, this is a great beginning, but we are all Andrew right now. Okay? Andrew went and got Peter. Peter knew nothing about Jesus. And he got him, and the disciples grew, and that message grew. We have a message out there, but we have to go to work. And I just hope that we can all continue this forum and do some things. So next time we get together, we should all have a story to tell. I got a call the other day. A lady went to Publix grocery store, and she walked out the store. Her kids were waiting for her. These ICE people snatched her up. Her kids today 4 days later, don't know where their mother is. It's ridiculous. And the other day in Chicago, going into that apartment building, I know that South Shore area, probably ran by that apartment building. I know where those people are living. I talked to a guy in Chicago last night. His son is afraid to go outside now. So that's where my heart is. It's an attack on brown folks and black folks, like Governor Pritzker said, the way people look and the way they talk, their accent. So you see a person in Chicago that's from Dominica, or whatever, another Hispanic or a Latin nation, they're going to get snatched up by ICE. Okay? And I'm going to close on one note. What happened to me just the other day, I came home and told my wife about it. There was a police car, a sheriff, way on the other side of Daniels if you're going toward Tamiami, people to know that way on the other side through traffic, this police sheriff jumped over all those lanes and got behind me, back enough, slowly far back enough, and I know he was running my license plates. And then all of a sudden he had a gap and he jumped back over to the far right lane and went straight ahead. That was profiling. I don't know what I look like, but I know I'm dark. He came after me because my car was shiny and everything like that. I have a Nissan Rogue. Okay, thanks a lot for the time. Don't ever give a preacher a mic, and I appreciate everybody. But we got to come back together. You all Andrew, find a Peter. Okay.
All right. Thanks, Barian. A special thanks, Sandra, Bill, for organizing this, for our wonderful panel. So impressive. What a great program. Tonight, we talked about inhumanity and we talked about hope. Just posted, the next program's coming up right away, October the 20th. Happy birthday, freedom. And you probably haven't heard of that, except that this is a national organization that is making an effort to bring those networks together that Reverend Meyer spoke of. Bring those networks together, crossing religious lines, crossing political lines, to look at what the founders had to do to compromise in order to get this country started and to write a constitution. And yes, there are things that they didn't put in that we would look at today and say, why didn't they do that? But the reality is they had to find that compromise was not a dirty word. So we've got national folks that will be presenting for us on the 20th of October at 7 o'clock. I put the registration in the chat, or you can just go to Floridians for Democracy and upcoming events, and we'll be right there. We'd love to have all of you come back and participate. We're truly honored. So officially, we're going to sign off for tonight, but we're going to stay on for the next 15 minutes or so. And for anybody that would like to stay, we're going to go off of focus mode. And we are now, let me start. We're already off. Okay, we must already be off, Bill, off of Zoom focus mode. So anybody that would like to continue a chat, raise your Zoom hand and we'll call on you. It's not a requirement, but it's an opportunity. We're kind of drained maybe, but we're honored that people would be here. So we got Bill Hamilton. The hand is up. Bill, you're on mute. The famous words, you're on mute, Bill. Okay, there we go.
There we go. Had to find the command to unmute. First of all, I want to thank everybody that's participated in today's call. It's been very insightful. It's been a trip to church for me, and I appreciate that as much as any of your parishioners. I'm also always impressed by Betty Osceola's thoughtful response to questions and participation. My question is, and I'd originally thought about this for Arthur Jones because of the role that minority congregations played in the civil rights role. But I really want to address it to everybody. And that's for those of us who strongly feel that we are losing control of our democracy. We have very little way, I feel somewhat powerless in order to try and convince the world by talk to change the direction the country's going. And my question for each of you is, how do you feel about organizations such as No Kings? What do you feel about public protests? And would you advise your congregations one way or the other in terms of that kind of participation?
I think you're speaking to the panel. So is there anybody that remained from the panel that would like to respond to Bill's comment? We have some hands.
I'll respond. I'll respond first. You know, I think American exceptionalism is a large part of the problem because American exceptionalism is the umbrella under which we justify selfishness. We justify a me first mentality. We justify a me and mine first mentality, my way or the highway mentality. We live in an era and in an age and in a place where compromise is seen as weakness, where I want everything right now without waiting. And that's just the way it is. That was only magnified by COVID, where people felt like they felt if they had a right to go out in public and not wear a mask and possibly infect others, possibly fatally, they had that right as Americans. And so we need to come together and we need to protest. And we need the drive and the energy and the ingenuity of the civil rights movement. But we need a 21st century innovative spin to it. Because now it's hard to get people to leave their homes and leave their streaming service and leave their activities, leave their Netflix to go out and put on sneakers and march in the hot sun or in cold weather or in rainy weather, to put down their cell phone, to get off social media, to come together and join a collective for the greatest good of all. It's hard to justify. It's hard to get people to do that. It's very hard to get people to do that now. And so we, the people, are fragmented. How do we bring that back? How do we unify? Because unity is the key, but it's hard to find a predictable, reliable way of bringing us together to protest, to take part in marches like the No Kings March. That's what's going to require brain power and prayer and collaboration.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there someone else who would like to speak on this? And then we'll go to Beverly next.
I want to just piggyback on what Arthur said. First, we have to decide what it is that we want. The other side knows what it wants. We have to decide what it wants. And when we talk about democracy, and I'm gonna have to rely on Amanda because it's been a long time since I was in classes taking government. But democracy meant that you had rule by the majority. And so if the majority of people who voted wanted what Trump is offering, that's a democracy. That's a democracy. And so we have to figure out exactly what we mean by democracy, what that looks like. And when we look at the protest, one of the problems, because I led a prayer vigil in front of the White House in March. And in my head, it was Joshua and Jericho and bringing the walls down. But once I got there, I'm going like, okay, we're going to march in a circle for an hour and then we're going to go home. It made people feel good that they were doing something. But if you look at the bus boycott in Montgomery, Alabama in 53, whatever it was, everybody signed on. And they knew what they were going at. They're going to just bring down the bus system. They weren't going to get rid of racism or segregation in housing, segregation. They said, we're going to bring down the bus system. And everybody did it for as long as it took. With our protests, they're a couple of days. And they will watch us march for a couple of days or a couple of hours. From what I'm hearing, your vigils in the Everglades, they are protracted, and we need a concerted effort. We just can't, okay, one day we do that, and one day we do that, one day we do that, because that's what they're looking for. So we have to figure out what we are willing to commit the time and the effort in order to bring the system down. And that takes, as Arthur said, that takes planning. That takes folks getting together and strategizing. But just hodgepodge. They will watch us walk until we have no more feet. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Very powerful. Beverly, you've had your hand up.
Yes, I'm Beverly Ward. I have an environmental ministry through the Southeastern, it's really an Earth Care ministry, the Southeastern Yearly Meeting of the Religious Society of Friends, or Quakers. Part of that is my central focus is to all of the monthly meetings and worship groups throughout Florida, parts of Georgia, South Carolina, Havana, and Nicaragua. I think I covered everybody. My point is there are only 400,000 Quakers worldwide. So we are charged to go with a network model. I am a resource to this group, and I don't have access to the chat, but if you go to S as in South, E as in Eastern, Y as in yearly, and then M as in meeting, and then Quakers, it's all one word, .org. Under Earth Care, you can get my contact information. The bigger part of my ministry is that I'm connected with all of the Quaker organizations globally. So when we do this work, just reach out to me. If it's not within my wheelhouse, I can connect you. And also the Quakers in Florida are affiliated with a number of the direct action and training agencies, the DART agencies. So we have this network already built. I'm on the board of the Florida Council of Churches, which Russell is the executive director of. So we've got it. One good thing that I know from the strategy, I come out of the Birmingham Children's Crusade, okay, about this strategy is that some of it is like the mycelium. A lot of, what you see in terms of marches or protests or whatever are just the nodes. The network is there. We don't want everything to be visible. So there is, and for the Montgomery bus boycott to happen, it started 15 years before. Same with the Children's Crusade in Birmingham. There's a lot there, and so this is work that I've been in all my life. I'm a bit cussed right now because I have been through this goat rodeo before, and I'm not going to go through it again. So reach out to me, and thank you all for especially the panel. Thank you so much.
And thank you for your comments, Beverly. We're going to do Rose, then Vicky, and then we'll sign off for the night. But this has been phenomenal. Rose? Rose? There you go. Rose, one more time.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, good. I wanted to respond to we have to get a sustained, organized presence that continues on and on. And when I think back on last April to now to October, the work that groups like Indivisible and 5051 and a whole host of others have done together and separately to manage and to gather people all across the country in these local demonstrations is phenomenal work. And it takes a lot of work. it the demonstrations are the public face of so much work in the background, and that work goes on every single day. And if you're on the calls that report on the demonstrations and on the next steps, I think you get a sense of ongoing, sustained, hopeful moving forward. It's different than maybe when, well, you know, I'm in my early 70s, so when I was really young, marches were marches. These are not marches, but they are public facing acts of being present, and they go on and on and on. So I think if we can remember that there are organizations that we can join as we need to, as we want to keep the sustained effort going. It's there, and we need to be present there. That's all I'm going to say.
Thanks, Rose. Vicky?
Hi. I just wanted to thank everyone for this panel. And I'm wondering, I guess my question is, you know, are you seeing young people of faith in these spaces? And I ask this because, you know, I had the privilege of being exposed to the Catholic worker tradition when I was in college, and learning about peacemaking that way, and nonviolence and nonviolent direct action and those kinds of things. And it had a profound impact on me. And now that I'm a teacher, I'm seeing the students in my classes. I teach at Rollins College, and I'm seeing these students, and I think that their understanding of faith, it's either absent, like a lot of young people, and it's millennials and Gen Zs tend to be moving away from the church, or moving away from organized religion in general. Or in some cases, it's skewing to a little bit more conservative side. And so I'm just wondering if there are a little bit more progressive young people who are involved in this movement, because I wonder about what's the next step, and what's the trajectory of these movements, particularly when it comes to people of faith.
Anybody want to respond?
Good questions.
I've seen more young people in the streets than in the church. The streets have become their church. And one of the reasons is that they are asking the questions, what type of world are they going to be leaving people even younger than they are? They're thinking ahead. And so they're willing to spend the time organizing and coming together and protesting. And it seems that they might be a little bit more like Jesus than the church, because they're actually out among the people, as opposed to being in the walls, in between the walls. And so they are active, and they understand that it's going to be up to them to see the changes through, so that perhaps folks won't have to go through this again. You know, as was said, you know, we've been this rodeo. As Beverly said, we're not riding anymore. And they definitely don't want to take that ride. Yeah.
Thanks, Gail. Bill and Sandra, Sandra moderated, Bill organized this. Do you have any final word?
I'd like to thank Sandra for a great job in moderating, and I'd like to thank the panel. It just was wonderful to meet you, and it's also amazing your message for us tonight. So thank you very much.
So the pressure's on us now. It's the collective us. We are the people, and we have to keep on fighting and keep on talking and sharing and speaking out. We cannot be silent. Thanks everyone for this great panel and a great program. Certainly one of the highlights of our many excellent programs. We hope to see you on the 20th for Happy Birthday Freedom. That happy birthday correlates to preparation for the national birthday in July of 26. And it's not intended to follow the whatever the Trump birthday effort might be. It's really to bring people together, not to push people apart. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you, everyone.
We're
Take
honored.
care.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you.